So welcome to Food Processing Skills Canada's third webinar in our new Speaking Food webinar series. My name is Tracy Bernacchi-Duza, and I am the Senior Project Manager at FPSC. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to the behind-the-scenes FPSC team. Marwan Dulay is our web host and process manager at FPSC and is coordinating the Speaking Food webinar series. Marwan's going to cover some webinar housekeeping, and then I will introduce our speaker for today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. And as Tracy mentioned, I am Marwan Dole here at FPSC, responsible for hosting the events for today. But also, I am the process manager working with the teams on the wonderful projects that we have. So, just for a couple of notes, the chat is open for you guys to discuss any points. So, please feel free to do so. We also have a Q&A that is open for you to submit any details or questions into that we will cover after Celine presents her details today, and we'll have a bunch of minutes to go over those. So please feel free to upvote, comment, or interact and submit those questions for us to review later on. And if anything does come up technically for you guys during the session, please do feel free to contact me and I will reach out to you via email. I will list my email in the chat below for your reference. And I hope you guys have a lovely session today. Thanks again, Tracy, and I'll leave it
Thanks,
back to you.
Marwan. So I'd like to introduce Celine Pinsent, a PhD, is a partner at DPM Research, where she has spent the past 20 years specializing in evaluation and applied research. For the last 8 years, she has collaborated with Food Processing Skills Canada, championing continuous learning within the industry. Celine has led the most complex program evaluations commissioned by the federal government, overseeing large-scale, multi-departmental initiatives. Yet her passion shines just as brightly when designing impact assessments for small pilot projects or developing logic models and performance indicators that drive real results. With a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Ottawa, Celine is a trained behavioral scientist with expertise in applied statistics, psychometrics, and methodology development. Her deep knowledge and hands-on approach make her an invaluable asset in both large-scale and grassroots initiatives alike. Celine is an island girl at heart, having been raised on a small farm on Prince Edward Island, where she was lucky enough to eat lobster and walk in the surf along the red sandy shore. Please welcome Celine Pinsent.
Thank you so much, Tracy, and hello, everyone. And I'm actually still in Prince Edward Island. For those of you who are Maritimers on the call, it's hard to leave and it's easy to come back. So after 20 years in Ottawa, I'm back on PEI and still eating lobster, and it's as good as ever, and eating potatoes. So we're Food Island. So I think I found a bit of a home working with FPSC over the last 7 or 8 years. Great to be here today because this is the time when we really get excited about the research team, because for years or months we work behind, and then actually we get to share results. So all the hard work and data analysis and things that don't sound all that fun, you actually get to come a little bit of an end and share results finally. So that's today for us. So this is great. I'm just going to share my screen, I think now. Let's see if we've been practicing, so hopefully this all works out okay. Perfect. So what we're going to do today is, everybody can see the screen hopefully. I see Marwan nodding, so that's a good sign. So what we're going to talk about is STAC, and I looked through the registration list and I noticed there's quite a few people who are on the registration list that are involved in STAC in some way, whether they're have been a participant or an employer. So we'll talk about this rather remarkable program and what we're learning about it. And we picked the name Training to Transformation. There's lots and lots of training programs, and there's lots of courses and such. But this seems to be a pretty unique approach and quite innovative. And we'll talk about those parts today and go through some of the data. So I'll probably chat for about 35 minutes. We'll have some time for questions as well. And it's going to be a little bit data heavy, but what I love about data is I'll try and tell you the story behind the data. So if you're one of those people like my sister who runs away from numbers, we'll do this gently. There'll be lots of numbers there, but we'll tell you what the story is behind them as we go along. Okay. The other thing you'll have to bear with me is I also from the Maritimes, and those of us from the Maritimes tend to speak quite quickly. So I'll try and slow myself down, but as I go through, we sometimes go a little bit fast. So just an overview. What we're going to do is, not everybody's been involved with STAC who is probably listening to the webinar or will be in the future. So what we're going to do is just take probably about 3 or 4 minutes, go through what is STAC for those. So it'll be a bit of a review for some of you, and for others, we'll just catch you up on the same page. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what my team does, is how do we know if STAC is working? So a lot of people put a lot of time and effort and resources into building STAC, developing STAC, implementing STAC, and then participating in STAC. So what my team does with DPM Research is we work with the STAC team and FPSC to try and figure out if STAC is actually working. Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing, what it's designed to do? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. And how we do that is number 3 and 4. We actually go and just talk to the supervisors and the employers who are participating in STAC to see what's happening. And then we do it in a fairly systematic way with surveys and data. And that's what we're going to present today, is the answer essentially to that question, is STAC working? And then what we'll do is just take a few minutes, if we've got time at the end, is just to a little bit more that if STAC is working, but why is it working? What are the key components that make STAC achieve the results that it does? So those are the 5 areas, and we'll walk through them. And hopefully, if, as Marwan said, any questions, just pop them in the Q&A or even in the chat, and then we'll take some time to go through some of the more details with you in question and answers. Okay, so just again, the catch up for everybody on the call. What is STAC? So it's a program. It's not a training course. It's not a it's not just a bunch of things put together. It is a program. So there's and when we talk about programs, we talk about pieces that have clear objectives, clear components, and expected results. That's what makes up a program. So it's a systematic approach to trying to achieve outcomes. So again, it's not just a course, it's a program. The parts that are in the light blue there with the red borders and the stuff, that's the content, those two. So really it's 39 courses, that's the content of the program. 39 courses, 68 hours of online learning, which is a lot, we've heard, but and it's really in 4 or 5 areas that you'll see listed in that box right in the middle. Then the other key component of content and learning comes through the coaching workshops, or what there's some call them webinars and so on, and HR coaching moments. So it's really the social and emotional learning webinars, or what we call ACACOS, was that part, plus the plus all the courses. So that's the content. And we'll talk about the other blue boxes as we go through, but there's a lot of things around the content as well, and that's important, especially when we get to the end and we try and figure out why it's working. Is a lot of it is not only the light blue boxes, but also those darker blue boxes of what's around the content as well. Okay, so we'll go into that. Who is the program for? Really, this program was set for supervisors. So you might have supervisor in your title, but we know also in food and beverage processing, but in many, many organizations, you don't necessarily have to be a supervisor to actually be with supervisor in your title to actually be responsible for supervising staff or other team members or even parts of their jobs and so on. So we had experienced supervisors, lead hands, production supervisors, line supervisors, and then we had almost about, I would say almost about 20% of our participants, I would put in the more aspiring supervisors. So these are people who are interested in continuing a career path in food and beverage processing, likely have some types of supervisory skills or some parts of supervisory tasks, and they also took part in STAC as well. And so that's the neat thing, is to see this is also not just have I already done it, but I want to learn how to do it. Okay, so that's who. Okay. This is purposefully very small and tiny because this is how much it was. So out of the 39 courses, we see social emotional learning, or ACACOS, and we'll talk about that quite a bit today. Food safety, the green one, level 3 supervisor, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and leadership for supervisors. So these were, the courses were essentially in modules or chunks. And these were the main chunks of the STAC program. And then also, remember, we also had the webinars and such, and those tended to go with the social emotional learning or the ACACOS program. The other thing I'll just point your attention to, you don't have to read all of this slide, but is all of the surveys. Those are the Celine moments, if you can think of it, or the DPM. Those are the evaluation pieces, and that we collected consistently data from participants, from employers at very specific times throughout the program. And that's how we're able to do evaluation and answer the question of, does STAC work? Is we have to ask people, we have to ask them in different ways at different points in the program. So you'll see, we'll talk about in a minute, all of those gold little highlights. So what we're focusing on is STAC in 2023-24, so just over a little over 12 months. There's 910 graduates from the Supervisor program, and that included 910 graduates from 171 facilities right across Canada. And you can see that throughout. So BC and Ontario had a lot of the facilities, but we did see graduates pretty much from coast to coast. And that's a nice sort of spread, because everybody has different experiences. Obviously, it's quite different working in Newfoundland than it is in Saskatchewan, but there are some things that are very similar in food and beverage processing. So it was good to get that nice spread of interest and participants from all over. The other interesting piece, and we won't go a lot into this presentation on this, but is the whole area of digital credentials. And this is becoming more and more a key part of career paths and understanding career mobility and such, is getting credit for things that you've learned and having those credentials. Not all of us go to formal post-secondary education with degrees after our names and so on. You can learn in a lot of different ways, and you can get credit for your knowledge and your experience in different ways. And so this is a whole new area, I think, that's real over the last few years is really burgeoning. So STAC was able to take advantage of digital credentials as well. And you can see the large number of credentials that were issued, and then how people are sharing them and such. So this is, I think, an area that's ripe for a lot more sharing and understanding. So just to press on that. So we'll now move into, how do we know if STAC is working? And that's the question that essentially when FPSC started working with me said, okay, how do we know if it's working? We're putting lots of investments. We're asking people to give their time up. We're handing out Chromebooks. We're developing all these materials. We need to know if it's working or not. Okay, and so that's essentially what myself and my team did for the last year and a half. When we go and we try and figure out if training is working or evaluate it, there's lots of different ways to do it. But one way that is fairly well known in the field is called the Kirkpatrick model. And it really looks at learning or training on 4 different levels. We're probably quite familiar. It really goes 1, 2, 3, 4 across from left to right. So the first one we usually do is we usually ask participants just and look at how they're responding to the training. Are they satisfied with the training? Do they find it interesting? Are they engaged? Do they drop out? Is the materials sufficient, and so on. So that's really what we call a reaction, and it's like we call a level 1. The interesting thing is we do in STAC, we measured this with everybody, and if you were one of the people, and we thank you for doing the surveys, some of the surveys were focused more on that. Were the materials appropriate? Were you able to access the learning system, learning management system, and so on? So what we do with that, and I put a little green checky mark right in the corner of that, because we assessed, yeah, for the most part it was. There were some things to change, and the STAC team changed things as we implemented. If there was, challenges with a particular course and such, adjustments were made and so on. But really, it's just a reaction, and we call them smiley face because it's usually very satisfied, non-satisfied type of thing. So we call those smiley face level. The ones we're more interested in now, and we were able to really push with this study and with STAC, was the next 3 levels. And those are where we're really getting to the essence of why we do training. So the next level is learning, and that's really, as we'd expect, how much did participants learn new skills or improve skills with participating in the program. Quite important because you have to learn, and so there were learning objectives and so on. So we measured that, and we'll show you some results on that because that's key. But then the next piece is we've all done this where we've gone to a workshop and been, oh, that was a great workshop, and I think I learned something, 1 and 2. But what we're really interested in the next level, number 3, is behavior. Are you actually able to apply or change your behavior given what you learned? Are you able to practice? Are you able to make improvements to your performance and such given what you've learned from the workshop, okay, or from the course or the program? So that is a little bit more difficult, and a lot of evaluations of training leave off on level 2. So they look at, were you satisfied with the training and did you learn something? But now the next level is, have you actually applied what you've learned to, in this case, because it's workplace training, to your workplace? So do we see changes in your behavior in the workplace as a result of what you've learned? I'm more conscious about food safety. I can understand these 5 aspects of standard operating procedures, or I am relating to my team and providing feedback a different way. That's what we're trying to figure out. Because then the next level, number 4, is, do we get the results on an organizational level? Employers provide training or facilitate training because they want to change to not only the individuals and their staff, but also to the organization. They want to see results. Okay, so really, and this is the hardest part, the most challenging part to actually demonstrate. So that's really where we're going to focus. So I'll go back to this again and again today, but really we're looking at number 2, 3, and 4, the brown, the purple, and the blue. And what did employers and supervisors tell us about that? Okay, so that's where the little target sign is. Within that, these are what we're trying to see if there's actually changes at the individual level: technical skills and knowledge, social emotional learning, leadership skills, job satisfaction, and something called a continuous learning mindset. So we know that people that perform well tend to always want to learn. And it doesn't matter if you're on the front line and you're started 3 weeks in. If you're curious and you want to learn more about a lot of different stuff, you're probably going to perform well. People like working with you and so on. So you get some really neat results from people having a continuous learning mindset. Then we'll also see levels at the team, some differences there. So performance, team performance, communication within and between teams, adaptability, really important in a manufacturing environment, and a supportive workplace. And that leads to things like retention, a better workplace culture, food safety, productivity, and training investments. Do our employers sort of seeing the benefits of training? Okay, so that's what we're looking. That sets up the whole framework of my team's job to ask supervisors and employers various questions along the ways to see if we're getting what we call evidence of any of these. So how do we do it? It's the power of data. Data is it's the lifeblood of an evaluator like myself and the research team. And we got a lot of data. We have almost 500,000 data points for this evaluation, which is a massive amount. We're still working on different analyses with the data. But the really interesting thing is over 500 data points collected per participant. For those of you who are on the webinar who were participants, you're going, I can believe it, with the number of surveys that we come, or the number of interviews and such. But really it's important, and that's essentially what allows us to demonstrate this type of outcomes. And we've talked about these already, but does data benefits? The one thing it does do is it also allows participants and stakeholders a voice. Okay, so we might have been able to design the best program ever on paper, but once we implement it, there's something wrong. And sometimes it can be really small things that aren't working, but it can ruin the whole sort of outcome chain for the program because we've just missed that one piece. So, but if we give participants and stakeholders a voice, they can tell us if it's working or not, and so on. We can make programming adjustments quickly, which for those of you who know Deborah, who was the project manager of this, making things on the fly and just making sure it worked and implemented, and could do that very, very quickly because she had data as we went along to sort of say, whoops, let's go here, turn left instead of right, okay? Accountability, there were, as you'll see at the beginning, there was the Government of Canada has invested in this. There's various public funds, so that's just making sure you spend funds wisely, demonstrate results, improve outcomes, and build something that we call evidence-based programming, which is we don't just put it out there and hope it works. We put it out there because we know this aspect will work given what we've collected as evidence. Okay, so that's the whole thing. So what do supervisors see as the benefits of STAC? And this is probably the voice we listen to a lot, the most. And we also listen to employers as well, because you'll see that they look at it with a different perspective than the supervisors who were participants in the program, going through the courses, working day to day, hour to hour with it, and seeing how it impacted not only their performance, but their team performance as well. So this is looking at, and what we'll do is we'll focus on really supervisory skills. There's lots of data on food safety skills and so on that'll be available in different reports and such. But I think for this webinar, if we look at clearly sort of the supervisory skills, and that leads a lot into the social emotional learning part as well, and how supervisors were able to grasp onto those skills and I would say integrate them into being a better supervisor as a result. So we'll see sort of links between things. But here you can read on the screen. So this is level 2. Remember, we've got 4 levels. So this is level 2. But this is what supervisors were telling us with respect to how they learned new skills or improved their skills specifically in the area of supervision. So these are just direct quotes we pulled. There are so many new techniques I can't wait to try. Okay, so that's I'm learning things, but now I want to try it. I want to go to level 3. Okay, I'm more confident now as a leader and as having sort of always still developing as a leader, as a supervisor. That's one of the biggest things. If you can grow that confidence with knowledge and practice and understanding, you become a better leader, a better supervisor. Learned a tremendous amount of transferable knowledge. So that's interesting, of not just specific skills in a specific pocket, but things that I might be able to use in various places. Great course for the new supervisors, lots of information which will be useful in daily production life. Insights I gained about our work culture, effective people management, emotional intelligence, and dealing with various challenges was truly invaluable. So again, we're seeing sort of things we've learned and such. They will be valuable. I want to try them out and so on. Really sort of level 2 type of comments. And in the corner here, we can see it's level 2, and this is some of the data. Okay, so we're going to be seeing very similar graphs throughout the rest of the presentation. So I'll just take a minute now and explain sort of what the graph means. So going from left to right, we're looking at where the question usually is how much improvement, or did you notice any improvement as a result of participating in STAC? So we want to attribute the change or the improvement to STAC, and did you notice any improvements in the following areas? Okay, so overall supervisory skills, we have from left 2% gray, which is no improvement, light blue, small improvements to my supervisory skills, 13%, and then medium and large improvement, which is really sort of, those are significant improvements, 45% and 39%. So 45% medium, 39% large. So overall, we have, if you look at sort of medium and large combined, we have 84% are indicating that they saw improvement, either a medium or a large amount in their supervisory skills as a result of having participated in STAC. So that's a pretty high level. And this is me as a supervisor assessing my own skills. Okay, so this is again sort of that level 2, how much did my skills? Relationships with people or teams you supervise, again, quite high. And the third one, relationships with other supervisors or managers. So it's not just you and your team, but it's also how the teams work with one another as well. And you have to be able to talk to other supervisors and managers to make sure you're a team fit, you're all part of a network, or you're all part of a line. Okay, so again, quite positive results there. But again, just at level 2. Remember, I'm looking at these skills in myself. These things are improving within me, okay, or that I've managed to improve. Also with supervisory skills, setting goals, quite high. And this is really interesting because this is very specific to the webinars, the social emotional learning webinars or workshops that we did was setting goals, and there was practice, you'd practice in them and so on. So that's interesting. And we also know people that set goals generally performance enhances quite quickly, and there's just an overall sort of structure that they have to actually assess their own investments and their outcomes. So it's a really exciting area to see that much improvement in. So setting goals, middle, providing corrective feedback to your team, that's always the hardest. You can see it is sort of, I need you to change some things, or this is not working out quite as well, let's try this. That's quite a challenge. Providing positive feedback, maybe not quite as challenging, but maybe we don't do it quite enough as well, pointing out the good things as well. So this is, and I think I'm missing a number, I think it's about 54% should be up on top of that pillar there. So again, very positive areas of improvement, and we are meeting that number 2 level of learning skills improvement. Making quick adjustments to your own work, supporting others in making quick adjustments to their work, and asking for things that you need to improve your performance. Again, these are key to a manufacturing environment, and that's ideally what you would like to be able to have somebody to either make quick adjustments, help others do that, or we need this in order to improve here. Okay, all good skills to have, and we see quite large improvements in those areas. And then these ones, I'll just take a minute these are listening skills, understanding and sharing others' feelings, and understanding your own feelings. Now this is the whole area of social emotional learning, and you can see a little bit, this is in the workplace, but these are also key things we try to not only instill in ourselves, in our relationships, but probably our children as well, of all these things of how to relate to one another, both in real workplace, in family situations, in coaching situations, if you're coaching a minor team, if you're playing on a softball team, working with others on a volunteer committee, all of these things are aspects that we'll see in a minute actually are using not only in the workplace, but people are also mentioning they're using them outside the workplace as well. And we again have very large improvements here as well. Okay. So this is quite positive, and this is all pointing a lot to the social emotional learning component, or ACACOS, which a lot of work has been put in by FPSC in that program. It's like almost like a sub-program of STAC, and we're seeing some pretty impressive results as a result, particularly for level 2. Okay, so now let's look, we're going to shift now to level 3, so behavior. Remember we had reactions, good, learn some skills, yep. Okay, now are you actually able to take those skills and apply what you've learned? Are you able to practice? Are you able to actually in your workplace be able to show that you have this knowledge and start to integrate it to your everyday tasks and such? So this is a crucial piece, because if you don't, and a lot of our training does stop at number 2, right? And again, it's things, we've been to a good workshop and stuff. It was great, it was interesting, learned some stuff. Not sure how much it applies to what I do every day, but it was interesting. Now we're going to say, well, no, it has to be more than interesting. It has to be applicable to what you do as an employee, as a team leader, and so on. Okay. So how often at work, it's a simple question, how often at work do you use something that you learned in STAC? And this is 6 months after they completed STAC. So it's not right after, so it's not like you come back from a workshop, you try something. No, this is 6 months later, at the 6-month point. How often are you using something that you learned in STAC? So 42% are using it daily, something they learned in STAC daily or more. Another third, approximately a third, are weekly or more than once weekly, okay, multiple times a week. And about a quarter are at least monthly, if not a few more times. Not quite weekly, but 3 or 4 times a month. And then we have about 4% that don't seem to really be using the STAC learnings that much. It's a fairly small percentage, but it is interesting. From a research perspective, it's interesting to sort of see who that 4 to 5% of participants are. And we will be doing some more work with that to see, because they've gone through the whole program, there's been the investment and so on, so it'll be worth looking to see what is it sort of they're more advanced, so they're not as learning as much, or they're just not able to, they're passing, but maybe not sort of integrating their working or they're compiling what they're learning into their work. So again, very positive results. I've been doing this work for a decade or so. We don't usually see results this high. So this is quite impressive for this program. Okay. And then the other aspects, so these are, again, sort of just more evidence looking at the behavior or the number 2 or number 3 level. So again, we're really sort of saying, are you actually using it? What we see coming up at the top is the social emotional learning, or the ACACOS program. So made up of both courses and the webinars or the workshops. They're actually rating that not only as most interesting, but also as most useful for their current job. And we also see food safety, maybe not quite as interesting, but definitely useful for the current job, because there's a number of courses on food safety and leadership. Okay, and you'll see sort of down. So again, from looking at behavior change, most useful for current job, that just gives us an indication that, as well, it might be interesting, but is it useful? And we're finding, especially for social and emotional learning, right out on top for both. Okay, so those are things like learning empathy, how to manage your own feelings, how to understand others' feelings and identify others' feelings, and so on. Okay, listening, goal setting, all those sorts of things. Then organizational level results, and the employers will have a lot more to say about this, but there is a few things that the supervisors or the participants said that I think are quite interesting to see. So this is at the highest level, and as a result of participating in STAC, 82% are more satisfied with their job. So their job didn't really change, but what they learned, how they could react to it, how they could integrate it, did. And their skill level changed, and they're actually more satisfied with their job. So that's an interesting finding. 86% enjoy supervisory related aspects of their job more. So they were supervisors or are on the bridge of being supervisors, and they're saying, the vast majority, 86%, they're actually enjoying that supervisory aspect of their job more. A happy supervisor or a content or satisfied supervisor likely is a better supervisor down the road, which can lead to better team performance and so on. So even though these aren't organizational level results, they're very good indicators that you're going to see organizational level results if you've got satisfied supervisors with their job and they're enjoying the supervisory aspects of their job more. They've got the skills now. They know how to perhaps work with conflict a little better, understand their team dynamics better, more confident with some food safety aspects and so on. So this is sort of a very good setup or foundation for what we'll see as organizational level results. All right. And with this I call bitten by the learning bug. Remember I talked a little bit right at the beginning about that continuous learning mindset. So one of the best employees is one who's curious. Sometimes as a supervisor, it'll drive you a little bit bonkers. You know, they're always sort of like, what next, what next, what next? But they can be fabulous in a team. Same thing with a supervisor. If you get someone who's curious, wants to learn more, that can make incredible sort of innovation, good performance for the team, excitement, satisfaction, and so on. So lots of good things tied to or related to that ability to actually want to learn more. So this was one of the more surprising results we got, because if you go back to what the description of the program is, they've just been through 39 courses, 68 hours of learning, workshops. This is on top of, for most of them, of having a full-time supervisor job or the equivalent. So this was a lot. This was a lot of, a big ask to do this much training mixed in a 12-month period. And quite often they did it within about sort of 4 or 5 months. So a lot on top. And then I said, should we even put this question in? Sort of like, oh, do you want to take more training? Because I thought for sure we'd get, no, that's enough. But what I was really surprised at this, we have essentially between 80 and 90% want more training even though they just finished a whole bunch of training in those areas. So again, it's sort of bitten by the learning bug, and it's sort of, and other people in the firm or the company want to take that training. They see the STAC training, I want to do that too, and so on. So it's very promising to that. If we, and well, maybe next time do it sort of pre-post, to sort of say, okay, would you like more training in this, and then again afterwards. But this is incredible post participation, post graduation, saying, yep, I'd still like to sign me up type of thing. So really, really important finding. That is a great finding for the organizational level, because you've got these supervisors who are engaged, want to learn, and want to improve. And you, as an employer, you couldn't really ask for more. Okay, so that's a great finding there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change. Those were all the supervisors. So these are the people who are the actual participants, doing the courses, doing the webinars, doing the workshops, practicing what they're learning, and so on. So that was what we saw there. Now we're going to switch to the perspective of the employers. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of see, are they noticing any differences? Are they noticing any improvements? Any challenges as a result of STAC being in their organization? So what we've done is we actually started the behavior level here, because I've already asked, remember when we were talking about supervisor skills before, we were asking at level 2, has this skill improved? And then I can sort of say, yep, it has. No, it hasn't for me. But if I'm asking an employer, has Celine's skill level improved? The only way you're going to see that is if I'm actually practicing it in the work environment. So I'm actually already doing that behavior. And so that's why when we talk about skills, it's, do you actually see these skills in your workers improved? So that means they're actually practicing, they're actually working in the workplace with them, and so on. So that's why we actually move this up to, we start at the behavior level, okay, with these guys. So this is what employers are saying. And again, we're at level 3, so pretty high up in our learning framework. The comprehensive curriculum provide valuable skills and knowledge to enhance our employees' abilities and contribute to our overall success. Positive feedback we receive from our employees echoes the program's effectiveness. They highlight the engaging content, the opportunity to learn alongside colleagues, and the practical application of the acquired skills. I like this next one. Our team usually sucks up knowledge. Not only that, I hear them using it. Okay, this is key. This is perfect. They say STAC all the time, so much that we should just call them the STAC team. And finally, this course goes beyond just supervisory skills. It delves into aspects often overlooked in the workplace, but emphasized in these training sessions. It's beneficial not only for supervisors, but for anyone in a leadership position. Okay. So again, very positive stuff. Let's take a look at the data, because we also know from data, if we just collect testimonials, they're great, but we don't see the whole picture. So let's talk to all the employers. What we see again in level 3 is we started looking at food and beverage processing skills, and saying, okay, so there were a number of courses in this. You now got people leading teams or supervising teams where they're learning not only about SOPs and GMPs and such, but also in the context of leading a team. So do you see skills at your organizational level overall improving in these areas? So not just Celine's, but her teams and so on, how your whole organization is operating with respect to this. So really nice numbers here. And again, no improvement, small improvement, medium, and large, okay, from left to right. So food safety, 64% said either medium or large improvements. That's 2 out of 3 participating employers say the skill levels related to food safety in my plant have increased or improved as a result of our supervisors having participated in STAC. And for those of us who are in or around the food and beverage processing industry, this is incredible, okay? Because what safety, sanitation, industrial safety, key parts of what we always have to monitor and enhance and improve, right? So you're getting that improvement attributable to STAC and supervisors participating in STAC. So really interesting stuff there. Workplace sanitation and workplace and industrial safety. So again, it's taking not only just some skills in those areas, but skills that supervisors have now the knowledge to be able to work with their teams to enhance, to grow, to support. And if there's problems, provide corrective feedback in order to make sure food safety is still paramount, that sanitation is working, and so on. So those are the important, and this is how it connects to those supervisory skills. So not just a checklist, yeah, we know the food safety protocols, but how do I make that protocol live? Okay, and live that protocol, okay? And that's what a supervisor's job is to not only watch, monitor, but support. Okay, so that's some basic food processing, quality control, quality assurance, GMPs and SOPs. Again, we see pretty good improvements, 67%, 50, 62%, so about 2/3 seeing medium to large improvements. And again, these are in areas overall for their company, not just Celine as a supervisor has a better sense of GMPs. This is overall for my workforce. And then we ask, okay, so for your supervisory skills, so we've already asked Celine as having been a participant, did she think her skills enhanced? Now we're asking we're asking the employers, can you actually see Celine using these skills? And do you see improvements there? And yes, supervisory skills, again, they're not quite as high as the supervisor themselves, but pretty close. 77% supervisor overall. Relationships. So I, as an employer, can actually watch people working with Celine as the supervisor and notice that the relationships of the people within her team are better. And not only that, Celine's relationships with the other managers and supervisors is better. I'm watching that happen. Okay. And again, watching provide corrective feedback. A little bit more difficult. Positive feedback. Yep. And listening skills. Very high on listening skills. And again, this is as an employer, being able to watch and observe that, quite interesting. Okay, and again, this is all the flexibility, and then this is the the hard part of being a supervisor, supporting your team to make it quick adjustments, being able to ask for things that your team needs, and setting goals. Again, some of that newer rather than other areas, but really important for all supervisors to be able to do this, and we're seeing nice big improvements there. Organizational level results. This is ultimately why you do training in the workplace, is to say, okay, at an organization, as an employer, I'm actually invested in this, and these are the results I'm getting. And this is some of the anecdotal testimonials. We, of course, fostering a work environment where everyone involved feels valued for, encouraged to do our best. Further, of course, inspire them to learn from their mistakes. They're important, push their limits, and each team member reaches their full potential. Secondly, we're so fortunate to be part of this. In my 20 years of being in business and HR, I have never encountered training of this magnitude. Then we're getting into a statement of, because we were asking how, is this actually saving you money? Is there a return on your investment? Because there's an investment. You're pulling people off the line to participate in training and so on. So there was one larger company. Next week, this program is saving us, I'm reiterating that this program is saving us $3.2 million. So again, that's a pretty strong statement to what we call ROI, or return on investment of training. And that's at an organizational level. So if I've got my supervisors working at this level, I can expect my teams to work at this level, and so on. We'll see in a minute what that ends up. Training was a fantastic experience that significantly enhanced our food processing knowledge and improved relationships and communication within our workplace. We truly appreciate this valuable opportunity. Okay. So this is the organization. This is the level 4. This is what we're all striving for, is can we turn this organization and improve it into something as a result of just impacting the training, okay, and going through. Individuals' productivity and performance, again, 2 out of 3 said medium to large, 63%. Team productivity, and again, high numbers, 62%. And employees' interest in overall company performance. And we shouldn't, this is important, because again, if you're working as part of a team and you're a supervisor and you're working as a group, as a team, versus just as a group of individuals, right? You're working as a team and it's overall company performance. And if you can get that to change and improve versus I'm here, it's a job, I do it, I go home, then you're probably your overall, A, it's probably a nicer place to work. B, you've got retention, and C, retention improvement, and C, your productivity is going to go up, as we see. Okay, so these things are all related in many ways because you generally don't have one without the others, but it's nice that we're seeing it hit on all these indicators. Workplace communication, again, and workplace culture, going back to the ACACOS or the social emotional learning, these things can be horrible if they're not working. It's very challenging to turn it around, but if it's going downhill, but as we see, this is actually pushing things in the right direction for sure. Okay. And again, that would be probably a lot of the practice and the knowledge that you come in. Understanding other people, communicating, listening, managing your own emotions, and so on. All of that will play into this as well. And what we see here, again, remember we talked about just in the corner that there's 82% are more satisfied with their job and 86% enjoy supervisory-related experience. We would expect those to all impact, not only across all of these, but particularly on area of rates of retention. If you ask people why they leave, quite often it's conflicts, challenges with their supervisor, challenges with or conflicts with their other team members, and so on. So if you can help with workplace communication and workplace culture with those, that's great, because you're going to then lead to these other aspects. Okay. Workforce planning decisions, training opportunities, and workers' interest in training and learning. And remember, again, this was bitten by the bug, so we've got it. Basically, the employers are seeing this. Interest in training and learning, the employers are hearing the message, supervisors are very clearly saying, I want more training in this, I'm curious, I want to improve, and they're hearing that message, that's great. And also just providing training, employers are saying we're actually providing better, more training as a result of STAC, which is nice to hear as well. So why is STAC working? It seems to be working. We're getting that both from supervisors and employers. What are the key components that are making it work? I think probably top of the list would be ACACOS. It's very unique in what it does, and we're seeing very impressive results from it. Supervisors and employers are indicating very positive impacts at individual, team, and organization levels, and I think we can tie that back directly with those areas to what people are learning in ACACOS. The other interesting thing is participants report applying their learning very quickly. So it's like they're almost in a workshop that morning and they're trying stuff that afternoon on how to relate to people, how to understand people, better communication, empathy. So it's interesting, it's almost immediate, the actual applying their learning versus I'll try that in 6 months. No, they're working it right away. A variety of relationships, both workplace and personal, which is interesting too, because you get to practice in both workplace and at home, and with, again, sort of coaching teams, with your family and so on. So it's a variety of relationships. It's not just a workplace. It is focused on the workplace, our examples and such, but those are skills that we can carry with us in all of our environments or spheres. Significant workplace culture change has been noted, and also the webinars or the workshops are highlighted as key to understanding and practicing course content. So it's not just courses, it's the workbooks, it's the workshops, it's the coaching, and we're trying sort of office hours with this next one to sort of say, okay, this is how people can integrate this knowledge, practice, understand, have their questions answered, and watch and being able to see. Okay. The second main thing, I think, which is important, is basically that we have all of this connected to the learning and recognition framework. Remember when I started out, I said, this is a program. This isn't just a course. It's not just a series of courses. It's a program, has all those components, and that program has a structure and is based on this very unique thing that the Food and Beverage Processing Canada has. That basically validated by interest. FPSC has worked a lot on this, and it's a really, if you haven't looked at it, I would encourage you, it's available on the website to go take a look. And it's actually a program that sits on this piece that a lot of work went into, work with industry to say, okay, what are the competencies that are needed? What makes a good foundational worker, what makes a good supervisor, what are the different areas, and so on. So it's a program that fits into something. It's not just a standalone piece. And so there's a lot of good work on that. So key competencies, and we're seeing, if anything, the results from STAC actually validate, again, this framework, because that's what it's based on. Okay. And as I said, it's a program. It's not just a course. It has program logic. The other thing, and I'll just look at, there's connections to other programs, and it's there's a lot of supports and materials. So I'll just show you again. So this is the content, but it's all of this with all the little stars around that actually contribute to the outcomes. So if you just threw up 39 courses and didn't have all the other pieces, you wouldn't be getting the same results. And that's what we heard consistently. So it's the credentials, it's the dashboards, so that employers and employees can understand where they are in the program, who needs support, what other pieces. Key piece has been the, I forget how many Chromebooks went out with this program. Because a lot of people working in food and beverage, they don't necessarily have their own computer. They sit at a desk. I have a computer, I sit at a desk, I'm a researcher. But if I was working in a food and beverage production facility, I may not have that office space per se. So providing Chromebooks that you can just pack around with you, pack home and so on, allows you to actually do this type of training on the fly and go to workshops and so on. So there's lots of things around this that actually are a success as well. So this is sort of what we're continuing to work on. I'm going to wrap up now. And my team is continuing to study and evaluate. We've got 500,000 data points, and we're only about halfway through them. And trying to figure out all the connections and links that you'll see here, and try and demonstrate those with numbers and with data, and then just improve the next version of the program. So that's sort of where we're at. And I think that is it. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. I think we probably have 5 or 10, maybe about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. I'm not sure if any have come in while I've been speaking. And I think Marwan or Tracy will come on and tell you sort of next steps, because I think the deck and such will be available to folks. So.
Yes, thank you so much, Celine. And I'm just going to take a second here to bring back Tracy. And we're doing pretty well on time. Now, we did get a lot of interesting questions, so we might go a bit over time. Is that okay, Celine? Just for us to stick around and do that? Awesome. So just for everyone as well, we will be here for a bit longer just to cover the questions. However, if you can't stay, this meeting is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording of the meeting back to you alongside the slides and any other follow-up links or items for your reference. So this is going to help, and we'll send it directly to the email that you're registered with. So we'll just take a second here. And yeah, so we have 12 questions in. So we'll get started here. Okay, well, before I do, actually, I just want to ask, Tracy, is there anything you'd like to cover first, or should I just jump right in?
Oh, let's jump in. Those questions look really interesting. So
Awesome.
we'd
All
like
right.
to...
Great. So I'm going to go through just the order that they started coming in. So one of the questions here is, what do you do with the data once the program is done?
We actually, what we do with the data is we continue to analyze it. And we also then we'll look at, so we always keep it. We take people's names off it at some point. So Data I Work doesn't have names or anything on it. But what we do is we keep it as essentially a learning database. And I assume that STAC and other versions of FPS training will continue in the future. And we can actually compare differences in outcomes to what STAC for Supervisor is versus STAC for frontline workers, which is just currently being implemented. We can actually compare and contrast then. So yeah, so you always sort of keep data, you make sure you protect confidentiality and such like that, but the data should sort of stick around as long as you can, and it will definitely be useful for trends and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you, Celine. Okay, another question here is, were there any areas of improvement and changes identified from the program findings?
Yeah, I think a couple of the things that came out, and that was mostly in that level 1 type of training, it was mostly around implementation. was starting to look at things. It's a heavy program. And these are, especially for supervisors who have a lot of demands on their time and so on. So some of the things we learned from people who weren't able to finish the program is it was just all of the components and the expected timeline were a little bit too heavy for them and their load. And could you make training almost more modular? So looking at different components, perhaps again, linking back to that learning and recognition framework, but could you actually sort of make modules? So I could do, I wouldn't have to do STAC overall, but I could do part 1 of STAC and then part 2 maybe the next year and so on. So to stretch things out a little bit more, because it is a heavy program for sure. So that'd be probably one of the main improvements, and then just ongoing sort of changes to courses and things like that. It's ongoing.
Okay, that's awesome. And the next question that came in here is mentioning, is this type of training worthwhile for a company? And how is that measured across the displayed programs in terms of ROI?
Okay, so we're just starting to look at this now. We're actually sort of starting to put dollar amounts to things, because that's really how return on investment, because ultimately employers are private organizations or private companies. They need to sort of say, if I'm going to invest in a certain area, whether it be different types of packaging or training for supervisors and so on, I have to understand how is that going to affect my bottom line? Is there going to be a difference? So we're starting to do that now. We've done some initial calculations. It looks very positive. And it's not surprising, the return on investment or the ROI, given sort of if you can retain one supervisor for a period of an extra 2 years because they're more satisfied with their job and such, then you avoid turnover costs and such. So it actually adds up quite quickly on the positive side for training. So, but we'll continue with that. So more stay tuned, and probably I would guess in sort of 4 or 5 months we'll have some numbers on that.
Well, I guess so far, even one of the statistics was mentioning how much savings were happening on the training. I'm sure that would be considered as part of the return on
Exactly.
investment as
Yeah,
well,
you're
right?
right.
So,
Right on the mark.
probably a very wide evaluation, since that would be very interesting to see as part of our programs as a dollar values. Thank you for that. Okay, and then the next question here is asking, why do you think social emotional learning scored so high? I think that's really interesting.
I think it's, I'll give you my, when first it was going to be included in the program. I'm a psychologist, right? So that's a lot of what I do is training in social emotional learning and working with people on improving those skills, often not in a training way, but more with, therapy and stuff. I didn't think it was necessarily going to work, but I step to the side now and say it's been astoundingly successful. It is why it works, I think, is we have people that are open to it. And it's also, I think, the way it's being presented is this is a key skill that you have as a supervisor or as an employee that we could all do a little better at. So you don't have to be perfect, but it is a way, and it can help in this area, this area, and this area. And this is, so it's not sort of just touchy-feely stuff that doesn't belong in the workplace. No, it does belong in the workplace, and this is what workplaces are all about. So I think that message has been heard loud and clear by the employers, but also the participants. And that's why they're going, this is important. This is, if I think of the stress of my day, we talk to people about their stress levels, what they like about work and so on. And many of them we think it's like overwork, and yeah, maybe, but for the most part, it can be conflict with not being able to express yourself, not being understood, not understanding how to listen to someone who might be a bit different from you. So that's what causes a lot of stress and conflict. So I think people are finally go, oh, thank goodness, here's some things that are addressing what I find are my biggest challenges at work, either as a supervisor or as an employee. So it's, and again, I am just thrilled to see that that's coming at the top all the time.
Yeah,
It's great.
that's awesome. And like soft skills are taking such a huge front, and with the updates that are happening with the skills for success model, and it is really vital. And as someone that's taken a lot of interest in psychology and has taken a lot of courses regarding soft skills, I also find that you take those skills back home with you with your interactions with your personal life as well. And it's things that are very useful and positive for you overall to start really having a perspective and mindset rather than just kind of like that work daily grind, get your coffee in, get things done. So it's awesome to really see those frameworks play in. And I'm glad that it's scoring that high as
Me
well. So that's
too, me
awesome to
too.
see. Thank you.
And too, because over the years, we seem to have drifted away from soft skills. right? And it was all based on you had to know your job, you had to know the technology, you had to, lots of those things. And we kind of drifted from just, having empathy for people and understanding that someone is different from you and how would you get along better. So it's really encouraging to see, and that the uptake is so amazing that people are really finding benefits in this.
Yeah.
I find it very, very, very rewarding to sit. I sit on the sidelines for a large part, but sit on the sidelines and watch it. It's quite rewarding to see that.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always good to have a framework that builds better leaders rather than just better workers, I think. And you can have those go hand in hand. So it's awesome to see that. Okay, so next question here. So this is from Sandra Purdy. Thank you, Sandra. So the 4% not using / applying the learnings, is it more related to their role in the organization? And as an example, expiring individuals may not have the chance to use, or maybe a production employee has taken the course to improve their own understanding, but do not get to use in the workplace because of their role.
That's a great hypothesis, and I'm making a note right now to check that out because we have the data. We can actually look at that because we do ask people about their roles. That's a great hypothesis, and that's why I would check to see, yeah, to sort of see. Because at first I was scratching my head. I'm going, is it age? Is it gender? Is it, and so on. But that's a great hypothesis. We'll take a look. And as I said, we're still about halfway through the analysis of this at this point.
Mhm.
So we'll call it we'll put your name on the hypothesis and see what we think.
Thank you, Sandra. And this also circles back on what we do with the data, right? We keep it so that
Yep.
we can find more stuff. So this is great.
Exactly. Any of these
All
questions can go date.
right. So next up, does it matter which level I train first, supervisors or production workers?
Yeah, that's a good question because we actually, the first pilot of STAC was focused primarily, we thought, it was in the Atlantic provinces, so some groups may have, who are on the call may have participated in that. And we had developed it as more of a frontline worker program with some space for supervisors, but mostly as a frontline worker program and even sort of new entrants to the industry. As we started implementing it as a pilot in Atlantic Canada, one of the things that came up very quickly was the supervisor saying, I want to know what my team is learning, and I would like those skills as well. So then it ended up that in that case, the pilot actually turned to supervisors. So that we still had about, a significant amount of frontline workers, but that was an early pilot. So then that was then the launch of frontline supervisor, or sorry, for supervisors to sort of say, okay, let's build an actual supervisor program, and that's what this is, STAC for supervisors. Since then, given the bug, I said bitten by the learning bug, we see a lot of demand coming from frontline workers as well, because you have to, this is not learning that you put in at one level of the company and, oh, my company's going to change. No, this is learning that all levels have to do, and including management and CEO or C-suite level. And FPSC is doing a great job, I think, of looking at different levels and different programming for each. So there has been a pilot for a program called Refine Yourself, also by FPSC, that looks at the C-suite. And then currently underway is the STAC for frontline workers, which is being implemented as we speak. So again, it's adjusted for different levels, but I don't think you can say start here, move there. And each company might be a bit different, but I think overall what we're seeing is supervisors is a good area to start, and you'll see some trickle down effects and trickle down interest and trickle up interest as well. So I think it's a good place to start, but it will be company specific, I think. So
It's really interesting seeing how the curiosity plays across the levels.
yeah.
So that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, a couple more here. So this is from Laura. Thank you, Laura. The focus on emotional intelligence and behavior is so valuable. Hiring and promotion policies should include them more often. Are more employers, sorry, learning about the STAT program?
Yeah, I think they are because we probably have a pretty good waiting list as well. So I hope they are. But from what I understand, FPSC is currently in a waiting list for staff supervisors, trying to see sort of how best to look at a second level there. Frontline workers is getting subscribed really fast with STAC, and I think there's again also a waiting list for that C-suite one as well. So I think it's catching on. And leading the pack with that sort of promotion, and the value of this is that social learning, the social emotional learning component for sure.
Yeah, and just as a notice for everyone on the call, if you're interested in some of these training programs, the best resource I would recommend would be to subscribe to the newsletter, as you would be up to date on all of these program releases as they're coming along. The C-suite program that Celine is alluding to here is the FPSC Refine Yourself program, which is also, not to take too much time here, but was a very successful program looking into emotional intelligence training at the C-suite level. And that's something that we're willing to kick off. And we also have, as Celine had mentioned, the STAC program for the supervisors and the frontline workers. So the best way to be updated in all of those and enrollments and new cohorts as they come up would definitely be the newsletter. And we can send some more details on that in the follow-up email. So thank you for your question there, Laura, and your answer, Celine. Now following up, how applicable would this type of training be for other levels in the company? So I think you kind of spoke to that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, I
now.
think it with a few adjustments, but the overall outcomes we would expect from someone.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think we addressed that and how that would work. So let's move on to the next one. Is the program still available and how do you sign up? I believe that would be referring to the STAC program here specifically.
Yeah, and that again, sort of like you said, the newsletter might be the best source for that, and
Yeah.
see if you can get your name on a waiting list. So.
Awesome. I think we're answering the questions as they're coming up here. Okay, so this is a comment from Laura as well. 32% in no improvement in absenteeism. How do you explain it?
Mm. Yeah, and this is 6 months in. So these are what I would suggest with that, and it would be interesting. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to, is look 12 months in as well, because some of these workplace changes are take some time, right? Workplace culture, you don't change it overnight, and so on. In fact, I was surprised we were seeing as much change as we did within that 6 month window since graduation to when we were surveying. So we might see again sort of some different levels of changes or shifts in some of those what we call outcomes 12 months in as well. So that would be my guess. And absenteeism, it's a challenging one because there's all sorts of different reasons for absenteeism. We would hope that not all of it is just I don't feel like going to work because I got a supervisor I don't like, but instead, that there are sort of valid reasons, illness and so on. So we'll see. So again, it's looking at the literature with absenteeism. It's a challenging one, but it's something to follow up with for sure. And we got some data, so we'll figure out which companies where we're seeing it, some companies where we're not seeing it. We can do some compare and contrast there. So.
Awesome. I think the data in 6 months is going to be amazing to kind of track back as well. So we'll see how that comes up. And then also from Laura, what is the gender ratio of the respondents?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't off the top of my head. I'd have to look. I won't answer off the top of my head, but we have I think more men in the program overall, but I would double check. So we can send that out, and that would be in some of the stack. But it's not overly one way or the other. We are starting to do some gender analysis of that to sort of see if we're getting different outcomes. Initially, we weren't at all. We didn't, but we're going to look at the 6 month follow up to see if we're getting some changes. So, okay.
Awesome. Great. And then Laura just asked now, will you release an update for the stats? And I would assume how.
That would be up to FPSC. So what we'll do is, because I think there'll be sort of some ongoing learnings, not only from analyzing more of the data that we've got right now, but potentially if we do a 12-month follow-up, then some follow-up at then. So that would be sort of up to FPSC as to whether to be something similar like this, an update with a webinar or an evaluation brief, or there's lots of options to do that.
Yeah. And I think also the best point for those quick hit updates and the successes and everything else would be the newsletter. I know that we usually communicate out a lot of these pieces because it does go out to the entire industry, and we do like to place data items and coverages on labor market information alongside all these stats for successful programs. So Laura, I would highly recommend that you sign up for the newsletter if you haven't yet, and we can definitely send a link for that. So yeah, I believe that's all the questions, but Sandra wanted to add a clarification. When she was asking her questions about expiring people, she meant aspiring individuals and not expiring. So thank you, Sandra, for the clarification. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And we are quite a bit over time. So I just want to thank everybody from our attendees for joining and staying. And Celine, thank you so much for sticking along as well to help us answer these questions and for your wonderful time in covering all of these data and stats.
Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so with that being said, we are going to wrap up. And just as a reminder, we'll send the recording of this webinar and session back to you alongside an email with the link to a downloadable presentation that you can get for the deck and some other details where you can sign up for the newsletter, as well as any of the follow-ups that we covered here. So thank you all again for your time and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.